Modern day marketing in financial services needs to look completely different than what it did even just 5 or 10 years ago. I'm going to talk about the landscape of marketing for financial service brands, the way you need to approach it, and the way that we approach it at 11FS. What is marketing? There's so much jargon out there, buzzwords, people saying different things. How do you actually need to think about marketing? For me, marketing is pretty straightforward. Marketing exists to drive the growth of the business. You drive the growth of the business through changing perception and through changing behavior. And for us, the way that we think about that at a high level, the two jobs that marketing does within 11FS is it grows the brand, which is the perception piece. How do you get people to think differently about 11FS or about your brand? And we generate leads. So we're a B2B product and services company. Marketing's job when it comes to the growth of revenue is to generate leads that our service line leads or our sales teams can actually connect with and talk with and hopefully convert into opportunities for us. So everything that marketing does, regardless of the approach that you take, should focus on those two things. There's a couple things to talk about when it comes to marketing and what is good marketing. For me and for us, the way that we think about good marketing is on a few different fronts. So first and foremost, good marketing gets noticed. So much advertising doesn't even break through. It doesn't even reach or impact the consumer with the message that you're actually trying to convey. You know, there's all those cliches about how attention is so fragmented and people don't pay attention anymore and half of your advertising budget is wasted. You just don't know what half. And that's true. So you need to focus on, in today's competitive media and marketing environment, are you actually reaching the people that you're trying to talk to? So good marketing gets noticed. The next thing is marketing needs to be relevant. If you're trying to change somebody's perception, if you're trying to change their behavior, you need to have a message and a story and a content or experience, whatever the actual channel and outcome is. You need to have something to say that's actually relevant to the people that you're trying to reach. And that sounds pretty straightforward, but I think a lot of times marketing teams or businesses can be focused too much on them and not focus enough on the actual end consumer and customer and what they care about. And then the last thing is it needs to add value. You know, it's no longer enough just to have a good product, good distribution, a good brand. There are so many of those out there now. There's so much choice for the modern day consumer. So you need to also add value through the marketing that you're doing. And that can come in different ways. It can be utility. So you're telling them something that they want to know. It can be entertainment. It can be maybe something like social good, so something that they care about and you're communicating how your brand cares about the same things that they do. But it's really those three things that good marketing does in this decade of 2020. In the world of financial services, good marketing is noticed, good marketing is relevant, and good marketing adds value. So let's talk about the landscape in which all of our brands in the world of financial services exist in 2020 in this new decade. So there's a few fundamental trends that are affecting that landscape and why modern day marketing needs to look different than it did even just a few years ago. So the first is that attention, the landscape of attention, is so different than it was 5 or 10 years ago. And so you need to know where your audience is spending time, but even just as importantly, you need to understand how to communicate with them in those channels in a way that's actually going to be contextual to the places that they're spending time. The next thing is culture, right? In order to be relevant, you need to understand the culture of the world around your audience. And culture looks very different now than it did 10 years ago, not just in the sense that culture is always changing, but also the influences and impacts of what shapes modern day culture are very different than they used to be. You know, for example, if you think about influencers, if you take any 15-year-old, for example, their celebrities, the people that are affecting their culture, are not the celebrities that we would think of. They're not the movie stars and kind of those A-list celebrities. They're people that have been born on YouTube or Instagram. And so culture looks very different in terms of how culture is being shaped for the audience you're trying to reach, and you need to understand that in order to have marketing that's relevant. And then the third thing is that there's this trend where brands need to take advantage of being more human in the marketing that they do. Customer-centric is another word that's thrown around a lot in our industry, more when it comes to product and business, but I also think that good marketing needs to be customer-centric. It needs to put the customer at the heart of it. You need to be empathetic to what the customer cares about in order to resonate with them, in order to break through. So those trends at a macro level are things that any modern-day marketer needs to understand and figure out how to work into their business. The shifting landscape of attention, the shifting landscape of culture, and this trend that's pushing things in the direction of marketing needing to be more empathetic and more human. Let's talk a little bit about how we do things here at 11FS. So we have 5 principles for how we think about our marketing strategy. The first is that we think about building a publishing company rather than an advertising team. So if you look at all the content that we put out, this is a perfect example. All of our podcasts, our events, our blogs, social media, newsletters, all of that is us thinking more like, how do we build a modern day media and publishing company around what we stand for, the future of financial services, not thinking like an advertiser of how do we do all these campaigns. So that's the first thing, is we think more like a publisher than an advertiser in the marketing that we do. The second thing is that we think about how do we balance art and science in the marketing that we do. So a lot of it is idea-led, but we're also spending just as much time collecting and looking at the data of how things are performing, how the community is shifting, what trends are going on out there, and we feed that into our editorial process. The third thing is you need to win on quality, which I think is pretty straightforward. You need to put good content out there, but you also need to win on quantity, which is something that people don't think enough about. The feed environment of the world of 2020 is so competitive, you need to be able to put out a ton of content that's going to continue to add value. Next, we think about this idea that we call 1% and 10x. So that means that we're constantly looking for all of the little 1% improvements that we can do to our marketing efforts and our content that we're putting out there, the little building blocks of improvement, but just as importantly, we think of the big ideas. And then lastly, you need to think about this idea of maximizing arbitrage, and that's a financial service term, so people probably know what it means in that context. For marketing, it means any brand and marketing team has a competitive advantage in what they do versus other brands. Don't play other people's games, know what you're really good at, and double down on that. For us, that is producing content for the modern day financial service professional, and we are doubling down on the amount of content that we're doing and the distribution of that content. So those are the 5 things for the marketing playbook at 11FS and how we're building out our media and marketing machine. We're building a publishing company, not an advertising company. We think about balancing art and science. We think about winning on quantity and quality. We think about 1% improvement and 10x ideas. And lastly, we look at maximizing arbitrage with everything that we do. So I hope that was helpful. That is my philosophy and our take on what modern day marketing and financial services looks like, and a little bit of a peek underneath the hood of how we do things here at 11FS. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts.